Today we're installing a Madjax 6-inch A-arm lift kit designed for a Yamaha Drive. Included in the kit is the lift kit itself, rear sway bar, 2 new A-arms, 2 new shocks, 2 U-bolts, 2 new spindles, a rear mounting bracket, hardware pack, and thread locking adhesive. Now let's get started. To begin the lift kit installation, you'll notice that we removed the front tires. We've also applied the part brake, jacked the cart up safely on stands. We've also removed the front bumper. We did this by removing the 2 10mm bolts in the bottom of the bumper brackets. And now we're ready to remove our front hubs. To get started, we're going to remove the dust cap from the hub, as well as the cotter pin and the hub nut and retain hardware. We're going to repeat this process on the passenger side. Now that we have our hub removed, we're going to remove the cotter pin from our rack and pinion, as well as our nut from our rack and pinion, and retain hardware. We're going to repeat this process on the passenger side. Now that our rack and pinion is removed from our spindles, we're going to remove our A-arms. We're going to retain these 2 bolts here and here, and repeat this process on the passenger side. Now that we removed our A-arm bolts, we're going to remove the top bolt of our spring and retain the hardware. Once this is removed, your whole factory spindle, A-arm, and spring will come off all at once. Be sure to retain your bolt and nut. You will not need the spindle, A-arm, or the shock again. We'll repeat this process on the passenger side. Now we're going to install our lift kit. We've used a jack stand to keep the lift kit into place. The tabs in the center of the lift kit go inside this center channel in your frame. The bolts are going to mount through the frame into the lift kit tabs. Now we're going to take the U-bolts that are provided in the kit and put those over the back of the frame like this, in through the back of your lift kit. I'm going to use the 17mm hardware and hand tighten. Now, using the 10mm by 25mm bolts included in your hardware kit, we're going to attach the center brackets of the lift kit to our frame. Once both bolts are in place, hand tighten, then you can tighten all the way. Now that our lift kit's attached to the center of our frame, we're going to tighten up our U-bolts. Now that our lift is secure, we're going to install our new A-arms. You want the angle of the A-arm pointing towards the front of the cart. Using the factory hardware, we're going to attach the new A-arms. Once both bolts are in place, then you tighten. Now we're going to repeat this process on the passenger side. Now we're going to attach our spindle using the Allen head bolts supplied in your kit. This is where you're going to use your thread locking adhesive. We'll repeat this process on the passenger side. Now that we have our spindles attached, we're going to reinstall our rack and pinion. We're going to repeat this process on the passenger side. Now that we have our rack and pinion attached to our spindle, we're going to install our shock. Using the retained hardware from earlier, we're going to attach the top of the shock to the frame and hand tighten. Now using the 40mm bolt supplied in your hardware pack, attach the bottom of your shock to your A-arm. Once both bolts are in place, then you can tighten. Now we're going to repeat this process on the passenger side. Now that we have our shocks attached, we're going to reinstall our factory hubs. Now we're going to reinstall our cotter pin. Now we're going to reattach our dust cap. We're going to install our hub on our passenger side, and then we're going to mount our wheels and tires. You'll notice that we've removed the rear tires, jacked up the cart, placed the cart on jack stands, and blocked the front wheels. Now, we've removed our motor cover, and we're going to remove the bolts from the top of the rear springs and retain the hardware. Before you remove your shock bolts, place a jack up under your rear motor and axle to support it. Now that you have the top of your springs loose, we're going to attach our Madjax rear mounting bracket. You want the angle pointed towards the front of the cart. The tab on the bottom of your bracket is where your spring's now going to mount. Where your spring was mounted to the factory bracket is where the top of the Madjax bracket will now rest. The angle of the bracket should be facing the front of the cart. Now that we have our springs attached to our new Madjax mounting bracket, we're going to attach the Madjax bracket to the factory spring brackets. We removed the two factory bolts earlier at the top of the bagwell. We're going to tighten the hardware once we get both bolts in place. Now that we have our Madjax mounting bracket attached, we're going to reinstall our motor cover. Now we're ready to install our sway bar. To do this, we're going to remove this bolt from the bottom of the bagwell bracket, and then using a 7/16 drill bit, drill down through the bagwell bracket to create a hole for the long bolt that's included in your hardware kit. This is going to attach to your sway bar later. Be sure to use eyewear. Now we're ready to attach our sway bar bracket. First thing we want to do is remove the factory bolt from the sway bar and retain the hardware. Now we're going to take the small bolt and attach our sway bar bracket to the factory sway bar bracket and tighten hardware. Now, using the retained hardware, we're going to attach our sway bar to the bottom of our sway bar bracket and tighten. Our last step is to insert the long bolt into the top of the bag well where we drilled the hole out. This will go into the top of our sway bar bracket, and then we'll tighten the hardware. Now our sway bar bracket's attached to our lift kit. Now that we have our lift kit installed, we're going to align our front tires. Be sure that your park brake is engaged, and we're going to remove the front bumper for video purposes. First thing we're going to do is adjust the camber on our front tires. We're going to take a straight edge and on a flat ground. You want to find if you have a gap anywhere, like we do at the top. We have about a 1/2 inch gap. We're going to adjust this on our heim joints. First thing we're going to do is pick the cart up though. Now that we have our cart lifted, to adjust your heim joint, use a 3/4 inch wrench. And we're going to loosen the 2 nuts on our lower control arm heim joint. This is going to allow us to move on this cart the bottom of our tire end so that our camber is correct. Now that you have your heim joint adjusted, lower the cart back down and recheck your camber. Now that our camber is correct, we're going to repeat this process on the other side. Now that we have our camber correct, we're going to align the front tires. To do this, we're going to pull a measurement across the front with a tape measure to the inside of each tire and record that measurement. We're going to do the same thing in the back of the tires. What we're looking for is 1/4 to 3/8 inch further out in the front than the rear. Now to get started, we're going to lift the cart back up and we're going to adjust our alignment at the steering rack. Now that we have our cart lifted, we're going to start on the driver's side. On our cart, the driver's side sticks out further than the passenger side. You want equal distance on both tires. You don't want to just adjust one or the other. You adjust which one you need to. Sometimes you may have to adjust both. So what we're looking at here on this particular cart is on our steering rack rod, I have about a 1/2 inch of reveal on my threads compared to my passenger side, which I have about 1/4 inch. So we're going to adjust the driver's side. Once we adjust the driver's side, we're going to drop the cart down and then we'll roll it forward 10 to 15 feet and we're going to check it again. Now that we drove our cart 10 to 15 feet forward, we want to remeasure our alignment. If you still need to align your cart, you can repeat the process from the last step. If everything is good and your cart's aligned, then you now finish installing your Madjax Lift Kit designed for a Yamaha Drive.